After years and years and years of talking about the dangers and risks of cask investment, the wider press is finally starting to take note of the size and scale of the scandal that is unfolding with cask investment. Now, recently, cask investment and the dangers of cask investment have been talked about on Radio 4 and in the Telegraph, and this is fantastic. And this is the start, this is the beginning of the end, in my opinion, for these cask investment companies. The amount of investment has grown so big, and the scale of the mis-selling and the scale of the lies that have been told is so big that it is going to start falling down, people, believe me. So what are these companies saying? What are the BBC saying, and what are the Telegraph saying? Well, the Radio 4 documentary was really interesting. It was called The Wild West of Whisky, From Cask Investment to Dram Scams. And we'll put a link below so you can listen to it. It's a 30-minute programme. I feature on it, Blair Bowman features on it, some various other prominent industry figures feature in it. And it's a really fascinating read because it's kind of like a mini documentary cataloguing most of the risks that come with cask investment, from paying too much from your cask, or paying too much for your cask in the first instance, to not getting a delivery order and not taking outright ownership of that cask. But it also talks about some of the other knock-on effects that you might not necessarily see unless you're in the industry. And, independent bottlers are struggling at the moment because these cask investment companies are selling casks for such obscene amounts of money that they're pushing the wholesale price of the casks up. So let's say that you've got a cask of whiskey that's worth £10,000 on the wholesale market, and you've got an investment company reselling it to the public at £20,000. That's pretty common. The problem is that the wholesalers then go, well, you know what? Why the hell are you making £10,000 profit and I'm only making £3,000 profit? I'm putting my prices up. So the cask goes up to 15 grand, and then the cask investment company puts theirs up to 25 grand. So the wholesaler goes, hang on a minute, you're still able to sell that? What a mug I am. I'm going to put my prices up, so everyone's going to have to pay more. And at the moment, we're seeing this vicious cycle of wholesale costs going up and up, and that is really bad for the industry. Independent bottlers release the majority of single cask releases. To be honest, they release more whiskey than pretty much anyone in the industry, like way more than all the distillery bottlings that come out. Any distillery, for instance, their core range is normally just a few bottles. But look at the output. Kalila, use that as an example. The Kalila distillery releases, I think it's got like about half a dozen core range bottles, and that's it. Look, last year there were well over 100 bottlings by independent bottlers of Kalila, and they are the ones that spread the brand out to all the drinking masses, a single cask at a time, because they can afford to do it. But the prices of the wholesale market are changing, and it's really bad. It's really bad. So when these cask investment companies are all brought down and the market is trimmed significantly from the number of players that are in it, you will see these wholesale prices falling. So that is one aspect that I found really interesting in that Radio 4 documentary. And also they spoke to the Glenfarclas distillery as well, because they famously had a break-in last year where a boatload of whiskey was taken. Why would someone break into a distillery and take a boatload of whiskey? I don't think they were taking the 12-year-old. They were taking the high-value, super premium bottles that these distilleries push out there. So if you want an interesting read or an interesting listen on your next run or commute or something, go and download and listen to this documentary. And yeah, I found it really good. I hope you find it really good too. Now, the Telegraph had more teeth in the BBC article. The BBC article was sort of quite gentle in its approach, talking about the risks, talking about the dangers, but there was no sort of like smoking guns of any wrongdoing or anything like that. Whereas the Telegraph article is really fascinating, and we've put this into a blog, so I'll put the link below to the blog and a link to the Telegraph article as well. And it's called "Avoid Being Caught Over a Barrel, Whiskey Investors Told." Now, what I love about this article, it's starting to expose wider malpractice of parts of this whiskey investment industry. Now, the start of the article goes on to say that the advertising standards agency are getting involved here because they've taken issue with the way that these companies are using indexes such as the Knight Frank index to talk about the returns of casks. Bottles and casks are significantly different. We've got loads of videos on this subject, but by doing that, is it a white lie? Of course it's a little white lie, it's harmless. It's not, it's mis-selling. And that is the danger with this. It's mis-selling, and people are walking into investments under false pretenses. And that's the really bad thing. So it's brilliant that the Advertising Standards Agency have said that they're looking into this and they're going to be they are conducting an investigation. The article also goes on to name a company, and the company were very misleading as well, but I'm not going to name that company. They've issued a correction, they've issued an apology, but what they said in email communications to everybody who is on their subscribership, they said that their company name has been approved by the Financial Conduct Authority and is now regulated. This is a massive deal for us, our clients, and anyone wanting to get involved in the industry, because it sets us apart as the only cask ownership business in Britain to be authorised and regulated by the FCA. The FCA don't regulate the cask industry, and this is what the Telegraph picked up on. That business is regulated by the FCA, but for a very small part of the business relating to credit brokering. So if you want to buy a cask on credit, it sounds like they're going to be able to offer you credit or payment terms to spread the cost of that purchase over a number of years. But the Telegraph took them to task with that, and because it's misleading to say your whole business is regulated by the FCA. And they did issue an email. Correction, which very specifically clarified what their the scope of that FCA regulation was. And they have, I think they've put updates on their websites and stuff. But these small errors and these small omissions by companies are sort of like the biggest problem, in my opinion. There's no one really setting out to scam people, I don't think, but there's lots of small white lies being told. There's lots of small deceiving and winding around the truth, especially like when we talk about Wowger and delivery orders and things. There's, everybody in the industry knows that you need a delivery order to take ownership of that cask. But they tell all their private individuals that you don't need a delivery order. This certificate will suffice. And then they'll use Scotch Whisky Association advice, but they'll actually trim out the little bit that's really important for the context, where it says, you should, before completing the purchase, you should seek with the warehouse documents what documents they require and whether the seller can provide them to you. So this editing of guidance and all of this is the biggest problem, in my opinion, because it's just pure mis-selling. So it's really good that these really important big issues about cask ownership are being talked about on a bigger scale. Will there be any more articles and investigations in the near future? I would bet a lot of money that there are, and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think this is where the cask investment bubble starts to run out of momentum.